Episode 154, the sales warning sign you're missing. We'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk to Matt Hansen. He is our sales and marketing, digital marketing guru. It's the middle of summer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
What do I do in the summer?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're not teaching.
No, I'm not teaching. I'm actually building a variety of things. So,
like what?
Well, we talked last week about the AI program that I built for social media, which is still running and running well. Yesterday, I was using Claude to build a new website for a new idea, and 5 minutes later, the website was developed, which is really cool to watch. Having a lot of conversations. Just took on a new client, for a pretty substantial client. So really excited to be working with them and kind of pushing them forward. But no, it's summer for me is finding new opportunities, new things to work on, new pet projects. And I love that part of it, and spending time with my kids, obviously, as well.
And you still want to do the podcast all the way through the summer?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. I
don't know if you're do it next week, so we got to figure out another day to do it because we normally do it on Thursdays. But
what do you got, a golf date or
I
what?
have my follow up to my surgery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got to go see.
And I just would I don't think we're violating any HIPAA laws here, but some of you watch this on YouTube, and it's available at WJOB 1230. It's called Mastering Local Marketing. He's nearly 40 pounds lighter, and you're probably wondering if you got the right people, and you do, and you look great, man.
Yeah, I dropped a few pounds over the last 60 days, and feeling good, and perfect timing for summer. Let's be honest. When it finally does warm up to be 95 degrees outside consistently, it won't be such a bad thing.
Yeah, we are at the bottom of Lake Michigan of extreme weather, like 6 months of just awful cold. And then maybe 2 transition months on either side, and then 2 decent months in the middle where it's hot as hell. But we haven't reached that yet. As a matter of fact, we're at an old radio station, a 103-year-old radio station, and we have the back door open. So if you hear the transmitter, too bad. Most small and medium-sized business owners watch revenue because it feels like the most important number, and it is important. But revenue is a lagging indicator. It tells you what already happened. The more useful question is, what number changes before revenue drops? That answer may be different for every business. Hanson, revenue is important. I get that. But it is looking back. How do you deal with that timeline?
Yeah, I think most people measure their success based on the revenues that are coming in, but there are key indicators that you need to pay attention to well before that. Revenue is the end game, right? So you should have already known that your revenues were going to be down before you get the aha moment of like, oh no, what just happened? Revenue is the end, but there are a variety of things that we need to look at well beforehand. So in our last episode, we were talking about data and kind of understanding that. And we talk about the sales funnel a lot in here. We talk about, the number of customers that walk into your store or call your business or whatever it may be, those people that are aware of you, the people that would consider buying from you, and the people that actually buy from you. And all of those indicators, whether it's physical people walking in your store, it's physical people calling you, or it's people going to your website, are all indicators that your revenue is either going up or it's going down. But we focus on revenue alone. And that's what we wanted to talk about today, is that you probably, if you're focusing just only on revenue and you're getting shocked, you're missing something. You're not tracking everything you should be tracking.
So for each of your business, your small to medium-sized business, we're kind of looking at it, and I guess I'm in the middle of this, is saying that revenue, sales, marketing, data, they actually lead what your business strategy should be. Now, it you don't always look at it that way. You're like, all right, well, I should be doing this, and then I'm going to go out and sell it, and then I'm going to bring so much money in, and hopefully there's some left at the end of the day, right? That's kind of how most of us do it. But as I was sharing with Adriana, our producer, who has done amazing jobs with all 154 episodes of Mastering Local Marketing, I'm actually shifting the look to say exactly what you're talking about. And I think this may come from part of the discussion that we had last night, is that I'm looking at what are our processes, what is our data, what is our past revenue, what are our projections going forward, and then what products and services should I have to perhaps increase that revenue in the future. That's a painful process, as I shared with you guys. Yeah. And I have been reviewing all of that right now, and I came in here kind of agitated, and I never get agitated, really. And I am, because I'm reviewing all of my indicators, right? Clicks, views, watch hours, revenue, of course. There's like 5 or 6 leading indicators of where we're going. And they're all pretty good, but they're not organized. And I need to understand which one or two of those is really should we concentrate on. Now, if you listen to this podcast on a long time, Matt Hansen, if anything he's taught you is that, like in a situation like this where I have 6 or 7 indicators I'm looking at, find one or two. Adriana's running a podcast network. All right, what are you going to spot? What part of it? You're going to do all podcasts and all genres of all lengths, or are you going to do one thing well? And if there's anything that you have taught us, the listener, or us, the student, is you got to do one thing well. Mm-hmm. Now, let's apply that to looking at your business and your indicators. Typically, if somebody goes in and really gets agitated like I am, looks at the 6 or 7 they think they're looking at, and they really hone in on that one, how do you find it?
So I think we have to go back to the sales funnel that we've talked about a million times.
Yay!
I know you love the sales funnel.
I love the sales funnel.
So do the listeners, actually.
You got to remind, because there's new listeners all the time.
So the sales funnel is essentially how many people are aware, right? So going from top to bottom, awareness, and then you move down to the next level, consideration. So how many people are aware that you're there, and then how many would consider buying from you? And then going down to the next level is how many become your customer, right? So we have talked a lot about trackability and understanding your data and those types of things. So let me pull it back to, if you have a brick and mortar store and somebody is walking into your store, that means, again, you've got awareness. People have walked in, they've considered going in and buying something. And then, what percentage of those are actually purchasing? So, I always say, well, if you can just go around and you can talk to individuals that aren't in your family, aren't friends, aren't neighbors, all that kind of stuff, and ask them how many people know who you are and take a general number off of that. What we see is for small and medium-sized businesses on the local level, it's usually about 10%, right? So I know there are some companies that are well-known and they've spent millions of dollars and all that kind of stuff, but what we're talking about is someone like you, right? Somebody that is at home, they're sitting in their store right now, or they're sitting at their office and they're trying to figure out where we go next. And you have to understand that we have to build awareness. Okay, so if nobody knows you're there, nobody's ever going to call, no one's ever going to walk in. And I see this a lot with people that will buy retail space or office space and it's buried in this strip mall on the backside, and there's no parking, and they did it because it's cheap rent. It's more expensive to be up front and visibility and all this other stuff. But what we're saying is you're already killing your sales funnel, because it's harder for you to generate enough awareness for somebody to either call or to walk in the front door. The other thing is, as you get into that consideration and people are starting to walk in the door or call you, if you don't know your average number of people that walk in your door, or average number of people that call you on a daily basis or even a monthly basis, you're not putting your data to the best use. So let me say it this way, and let's just use easy numbers here. let's say 50 people walk into your store on a daily basis. All right. And you sell, let's say 20 out of those 50 buy something. You're not ever going to sell 100% unless you're, let's call it a restaurant and somebody walks in and sits down. But, if you're converting 20 out of 50, that's great. Now, what happens if you get 100 people into there? Well, obviously, if everything else maintains the same, you're selling 40 people at that point because you've doubled the number of orders just based on everything stays the exact same. So if you're selling 20 people or you're selling 40 people, the revenue numbers, the average order value is typically about the same as well if you keep all of your data together. So what we know is just by driving more traffic into that store, our revenues are going to go up. Now let's flip this. Our revenues are either maintaining the same or they're going down. And you're looking at that going, well, how do we sell more? If you don't understand the data before that in that sales funnel, you don't understand how many people are walking in your door. You don't understand are people buying less when they walk in. So out of those 50 that we initially had come in that were buying, 20 of them were buying. Is it down to 10 at this point? That's a problem, right? So that's a leading indicator that's saying something is going on. Either we don't have the product, we're not listening to our customers and providing the value, or maybe our employees aren't paying attention.
Or you're attracting the wrong people into your store.
Yeah, it could be as well, right? So these are all things that are happening well before you get to the revenue side of things that you need to start to understand. So if you know that you normally get 50 people to walk in and all of a sudden you're only getting 20, what has happened, right? You're not advertising enough. You're not getting enough people to walk in that door. We need to do these things. We need to track these things because the revenue is the very last thing. It's like watching the end of a movie without understanding all of the setup to get to the end of the movie. It makes no sense. So you need to set the script before it to understand your numbers, to understand why that revenue is going down.
So it's such a huge topic of what do you look at in your data, and part of the challenge now is that with AI and with just an amazing amount of data coming at you, it can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But there are still certain principles of what you need to look at for your business. In other words, I'll give you an example. We're doing streaming high school sports, and we're trying to figure out what is our 1 or 2 data points that catch the eye of a potential advertiser. And we concentrated on viewer hours. Mm-hmm. And we were going with that, and it just isn't, there's not a ring to it. It's not attracting new people. But if we concentrate on the more qualitative stuff, like, hey, you could be next to a high school athlete. Hey, 20%, radio's hot right now. We just are more general about it. We turn a lot more heads, and then maybe one data point in there. Hey, we had 15 million Facebook impressions last year. Boom. For whatever reason, that turns heads more than all these hard-earned viewer hours. So I get the feeling that there are people in other businesses that work hard really to get to a certain ratio, or they get to work hard to get to a data point, and then they have all this data that comes to them, and then they're kind of looking at this one they've always looked at, but there's all this overwhelming data, and it is possible in that data that there's a different data point that they should be looking at. Mm-hmm. So how do you filter into that?
Well, I think you just said it, right? So you've been promoting viewership hours, and it really isn't resonating, right? So understanding the behaviors of your customer base and what resonates is most important. When you say 15 million impressions on Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, I mean, that's impressive to a lot of people because a lot of people would pay significant dollars to get that. So what you're saying with that is you're piggybacking off of, you want them to piggyback off of the success that you've had. But those impressions alone aren't enough to raise revenues, right? So it's a package deal is essentially what you're selling. But we had a conversation about a year ago where we sat down with the team and I said, how many calls are you making on a weekly basis? How many customers are you reaching out to? Are you reaching out to past customers? Is there a new lead form? Is there, do you have a list of potentials that have never advertised in the past? And it's all of those kinds of conversations that if you have, again, going back to, let's say you have 20 customers that you typically bring in all the time. Well, those 20 customers, at some point, one or two of them is going to fall off. It's just how things happen. How are you going to replace them? Can you get it to 40 next year? If I get it to 40, we got to double our efforts of what we've been doing, right? So that's what most people just look at the revenue and go, all right, we did well this year. We were up 10%. Okay. Well, what would have happened if you would have doubled your efforts? Could you have doubled the business?
So what I'm saying to you as a small to medium-sized business owner is that growth in, say, sales of your desirability of your product or service is only part of that game. And if you are looking, you get to a point and like you said, you say that's exactly what I have is about 20 main customers, and if one or two drop off, then all of a sudden I'm scrambling, right? Mm-hmm. But I have come in here as a agitated in that we're not seeing the data correctly. And what you're saying is ultimately you got to build an early warning system. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, in my analysis, I quit doing my morning show so that I could start looking at this, and I've been doing it a month, and here we are a month later, and one day I realized that I'm not viewing my data, I'm not organized, it's just a complete mess. And I think that a lot of people that I see around here in Northwest Indiana, which is a booming place, the Bears may come right down the street. Who knows? Just had the mayor sitting in this thing 45 minutes ago in this studio. Growth can actually be a problem also in the early warning systems. In other words, you can mask some of your problems by having pretty easy growth going on when you're still a poorly run business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, as you're growing, you think, oh, everything's great, but you're growing not necessarily based on your best behaviors. You're growing just because you have something that people want. Right?
Yes, and Matt talks about processes, and what I'm saying is I'm with you guys that are having some sort of growth. If you're listening to this podcast, you want to sell more, and you're probably doing okay that you're still in business. Most businesses fail. You're still in business, and you want to know, how do I do more? Well, if you are in a growth phase, that's actually a time where you have to still pay attention to the business administration and the marketing. And that's kind of what you're saying here.
Yeah, I mean, realize that we all go through kind of like a life cycle of our business, right? So if you're going through the growth phase, you're oblivious to the struggles that are ahead, right? You're going to reach maturity at some point, and you have to either reinvent or get really interesting at that point. You need to put a lot of effort into it. So, when we look at major brands, when I start talking about Pepsi or Coca-Cola or anything like that, I mean, they have to reinvent themselves, and they've done that through a variety of different products at this point. So, but in that growth stage, we don't look as detailed into our company as we should, right? Like if you're a startup, and technically Heartland's kind of like a startup, so
it is a startup.
It is a startup, yeah. But it's growing, so you can get away with kind of a little bit more unorganized structure because everything is moving so fast. But at some point, you have to start paying attention because things will start to flatten a little bit. And, if you understand it, and it's the conversations that we've had about the business is, what's your potential customer base? How big is it? Do you have a full list of everyone that could potentially be a customer? How many of those have you talked to? What's the conversion rate on that? What are your plans for moving forward? What are additional products that you're going to add in there, right? Like all of these things that are planning phases that, today we're talking about the revenue. Yeah, your revenue. And for as long as I've known you in this business, you've talked about hitting a certain revenue number.
That's it.
That's all you've said. I want to hit this number this year.
And that's why you're doing this podcast right now, because you got to look at other things.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah. So you've made the realization now. You're like, okay, now I know, right? And like I've seen you grow over the last year in all the different ways that you're going. So, if I've reached anybody, I've reached one.
Well, I'm extrapolating what you have impressed upon this business, which has been an amazing amount of positive. I mean, honestly, I think we would still be in business, but we would not have gotten to the point where I had to look back and get all frustrated at how we're operating. And you've brought to my attention exactly how much opportunity is out there. So I'm extrapolating to your small and medium-sized business that all I have ever looked at was revenue. And that comes out of the trading world. I'd go and stand in the pit for 20 years, and at the end of the day, how much did you make or lose? That was it. Mm-hmm. That's all you are. That was the scoreboard. There it is. On your way home, all right, your clerk sends you something, and back in the day before text and whatever, they would call you and tell you. Once you got home, all right, this is where you were. You'd have to be there at 5 a.m, make sure all your trades cleared, but it was all back to the revenue. Oh, does that change my rev from yesterday? All right. Well, no, it doesn't. All right. You're still at $2,000 or, after a while it's more zeros. But that is what I think a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, that's all they look at. Mm-hmm. You've taught me to not just look at that. And then when I looked away from it, I feel like throwing up about how badly I run and ignore certain indicators. So when you're talking to the average small and medium-sized business, you're talking about followers, their views, their impressions, that kind of thing. But you're also talking about, maybe their percent awareness, how much money are they sending out for, percentage of revenue are they putting towards marketing and so forth. So it's an entirely different universe other than revenue. We're not used to that.
Yeah.
None of us. I'm not used to it. All my buddies that own businesses, they're not used to it. They just get to the end and they stop for a drink afterwards. Oh, man, I sold 13.5 this morning. That's going to make my number for this month at this. Boom. That's it. There's no other indicator. How do you get people out of that?
Sorry, I'm laughing about that because I'm the downer in that conversation.
You are a huge downer, and I'm all yanked up from 1 month of looking at all the stuff you told me to look at, and it's not pretty. So, and maybe that'll happen to your business at some point.
So your buddy, right? So 13.5. Okay, that's great. Could you have done 30? What would it have taken?
This is my buddy, the roofer.
Yeah, what would it have taken to sell
I just sold 13.5 in the last hour, so and I sold 18 yesterday. Yeah. And I'm like, he's all excited, but it's all revenue. It's not like how much did I make, how much, what are the sales leads in the funnel, what are my visits to my website. None of that is there. It's just the revenue number, and he owns a company.
Yeah, 13.5 is great, but could you have done 30?
Oh, he could easily have done.
Okay, so what's it going to take to hire crew number 2, crew number 3?
So he doesn't want that extra crew, and I ask him that all the time. I go, could you have sold another one? Yeah, I could, but I'm sitting here with you having lunch for an hour and a half. Uh-huh. And but that would require me putting another installation crew in. And I'm like, well, how much would that be? Just, I'm making, look, I sold 13.5. I'll probably make 5.
So he's comfortable.
I'll make 6 on that. And my revenue, I got revenue. I'm gonna hit in this quarter some good numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are goals. Those are things that he's established. He's good right there.
But all of us in small and medium-sized business have to concentrate on the revenue just so we could be in business the next quarter.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is basically shifting to the planning and strategic planning phase.
Yeah. So I'm working with a company right now that they've hired some salespeople and they're trying to grow and it's interesting because we had this conversation last week about how do we get them going? How's these salespeople, what do they need to do? And they came back to him and they're like, oh, well, we've done this many calls this week and all this other stuff. And I was having the conversation. I said, well, how is that going? Well, we haven't sold anything yet. And I said, well, why haven't they sold anything yet? Well, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's all these excuses, all these different things that they want. And I said, well, what are your goals? All right, well, our goal is to sell, this many jobs at this average order. And I said, are they doing that? Well, no. Well, then why are you hiring them? And it's funny because we had 2 conversations and they were, from friend to friend, why are you doing this? And he goes, I know. I'm going to give them a little bit more time. And I said, why? Why are you doing that? You have goals that you're trying to accomplish here, and you're not willing to, to actually go and have them do this. I said, why don't you sit down with them on this conversation today and ask them, what's it going to take to get to our goal by the end of the week? And, it was all these other things that they were kind of pushing off and saying that here's the reason. So, he basically let them go and he's now doing a new hiring process for some things, but he has certain goals. He has a goal. He has an end goal of where he wants to be, and they're not anywhere near it right now. And it's driving every decision that he's making. He's looking at every single dollar he's spending. He's trying to get return on every dollar that he's putting out there. But again, your buddy, he's comfortable, and that's perfectly fine. There are a lot of people out there that maybe it's you that's listening, is you're comfortable where you're at. I live a great life. I run a small business, and this is where I want to be. But there are others of us out there that are going, how do I get this to $10 million a year? How do I get this to even more, right?
Once again, they are calculating in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. And just from this podcast, I didn't mean to cut you off. No. I cut off the teacher, which is number one thing not to do. But I want to point this out because I know we have 100 people who write us checks throughout the year. So I know a lot of small businesses. And you're saying we want to get to 1 million or 10 million, whatever it is. It's still only calibrating in terms of revenue. Right. And what you've taught me is to go back, analyze it, because I'm growing at 30% a year. I'm like, hey, that's really good. I think I could make it again. Mm-hmm. And you're like, yeah, it's just like you almost turn your nose up at it because it's being run so badly that it could be 50 or 70, right?
Well, you could double every single year.
So, all right, so that's a challenge, but it is still calibrating in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. For me to double, mm-hmm. I would have to go back and look at what the early warning signs are, look at what the data, look at how I organize my data, look at how I have customer service, all of the things of this podcast. So this is an important moment for us here, but I'm really extrapolating where we're at, and you may be in that same spot. You got to start looking at the other data other than revenue.
Yeah. So, just going back to, if you want to double your business this year, what is that going to take? How many people does that mean you have to walk through your front door? How many phone calls does that mean you have to have it come in? How many marketing dollars do you need to spend, right? Like, if I'm spending $500 a year in marketing and I want to do $1 million business, it's not going to happen, right? Like, you got to realize you've got to spend to make. And, you and I both have that trader mentality where I'm putting money up in the hopes that I'm going to get a percentage back, right? And that's the interesting part, is people want to hit those revenue numbers, but they don't want to do the work to understand what needs to happen. So if I've got to go out there and spend $10,000 a month to hit the revenue goal that I want to do, I have to be comfortable with that. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that because they don't understand the numbers and they haven't tied the numbers that they're measuring to the actual revenue dollars that they're doing. When you do that, I've literally sat down with companies and said, where do you want to be? And they'll tell me a revenue number. And I say, okay, well, you need to spend $65,000 this year on marketing. And they're like, well, I can't do that. And I said, then you're not going to hit your revenue numbers.
Let's end it right there. This was a long one, and it was an important one, especially for those of you who are undergoing some growth, are hitting your goals, and you're like my buddy, the roofer, who just sold a $6,500 residential roof. You're pretty happy about it. There's so much more in there, and that's part of what we're doing. We're trying to unlock some of your potential. And thank you, Matt Hansen. Thank you, Adriana. You do an amazing job, Adriana. Here's the shameless plug. That if anybody wants a podcast, you get a hold of Adriana at WJOB1230.com. That's Adriana with 2 N's. Don't contact Matt. Don't contact me. Adriana runs all of what we're doing, and thank you so much. Until next time, we'll see you later.